some task force members may have joined us from locations outside the room. When you join the meeting remotely, your microphone's automatically muted. Please unmute your microphone in order to respond to the roll call. If you are attending remotely, in addition to responding regarding your presence, please also indicate whether you're in Frankfort or outside of Frankfort for travel purposes. And then if you don't mind, after responding, please return your microphone to mute. With that, I'll ask Jennifer to call the roll. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Jason.
Senator Harper Angel.
Present outside of Frankfurt.
Thank you. Senator Nemes. Representative Heverin.
Present in the room.
Representative Kulkarni.
Present from my district.
Thank you. Tom Crawford.
Present in my office in Frankfurt.
Thank you. Co-Chair Mills.
Here in person.
Co-Chair Bridges.
Here in person.
I'd like to welcome everyone today, and we're going to get started. First thing I need is everyone got a copy of the minutes from the last meeting? Do I have a motion to approve? Second. All in favor? Aye. Next, we're going to get started on technology and software. We have a number of people present that's going to testify, and I'm going to start off with Tom Crawford for the Department of Revenue. Tom, we're glad to have you remotely and look forward to your presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman Bridges. Good afternoon, everyone, all my fellow committee members. With me today is Mike Tackett. He's the director of the division that provides a lot of guidance to the PVAs on their aerial photography and GIS software. And I'm hoping that he is able to share his screen and do our PowerPoint. Here we go. Are we good?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay, great. As you mentioned on the next slide, Mike, we are here to cover 4 different topics. You go back one, Mike.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. We were asked to cover 4 different topics today: valuation software and equipment needs, mapping software needs, shared technology and mapping, and then sheriff, clerk, PVA shared technology issues. But first, I want to give you some preliminary information, give you an update on what the PVAs have accomplished in a most difficult year in 2020. We now have all county tax rolls, property tax rolls certified. Tax bills are out in many counties. They started October the 1st, and most of the other counties will be out by November the 1st. So that's just a tremendous accomplishment by the PVA, since they were very limited in their field work. Their offices were closed, their courthouses were closed. It's just a tremendous effort on their part. You'll see that the assessments for 2020 are now up to $280.2 billion. And this is up from $269.4 billion last year. And just as importantly, new property for 2020 totaled $4.2 billion this year. And that's an increase over last year from $3.6 billion. And as we all know, all that new property translates into new revenues at both the state and the local level. And just a reminder about property tax collections, state property tax collections were $552 million in the previous fiscal year. And more importantly, the local property tax collections totaled $2.8 billion. That's actually from 2018. We're still working on the 2019 compilations. And of course, most of that is for the school districts. So I just wanted to give you that quick update on what's happening in property tax. Okay, Mike. Now, before we get into our topic, I want to give you an idea of what exactly is a GIS information and aerial photography, just to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about. And in this slide, this is an aerial photograph that can be found in a PVA office, and you will see that in this particular example, that the various parcel boundaries are outlined on the photograph, and the parcel selected is highlighted in a different color. And then to the right, you will see that there are several different queries that can be made to obtain additional information about that particular property. On the next slide, we're going to give you an idea of the various details that you can make that are maintained on the property by the PVA by selecting these various queries and going from left to right. The first query is on the property's assessment, and you can see that it's assessed for $290,000. And there's also some ownership information as well, but the primary focus of that query is for the assessment. The next one is for the property's ownership information. You see it's owned by Mike Taggart. I think he made that up. I don't believe he owns that big of a house. But, but it's also, the address is 161 Old Bridge in Danville, and just basic information about the property ownership information. And then the next query shows you information about the buildings on the property. It shows you the neighborhood is considered better, site condition excellent, building condition very good, excellent, and things of that nature about the property. And then lastly, somebody put my name in there in the sales history, but this is a sales query. It shows just who the property was transferred from, and also gives you a deed booking page, the deed amount, and things of that. So just the good information about the property in general. And then the next slide will give you an idea of a sketch that is also maintained by the PVA offices and the photographs of the property. And this just provides more information about the amount of square footage in the house, or if there are any decks or garage spaces, and the overall condition of the property. And sometimes you get an idea of what your neighboring property is doing. As you can see in the photograph of the house that we took, you see 3 different basketball goals of different sizes. They must have children of various ages. You got a really small basketball goal, and then the middle-sized basketball goal, and I assume the one on the right is the full-fledged 10-foot basketball goal, regulation goal. So just some interesting things that you sometimes see in photographs that are taken by the PVA offices. Okay, that gets us to our first topic, valuation software and equipment needs. And valuation software is typically referred to as computer-assisted or aided, I've heard both ways, computer-assisted mass appraisal systems, or CAMA for short. And this type of software can be very useful when a PVA must value a large area of properties that are similar in nature, like a large subdivision. And this is a very basic example that sales in a particular neighborhood can be evaluated to come up with values for, say, 3-bedroom homes or 4-bedroom homes, and whether or not a home has a basement. This is a very simplified example, but all those factors are taken into account, entered into the software, and then after taking that time up front, the software can then generate values very quickly for large areas of similar style homes, such as that large subdivision. So you're looking at the map and thinking, well, my goodness, there's only 9 counties throughout the state that take advantage of computer-assisted mass appraisal. And there may be a few others. I'm not sure about Kenton and Campbell, and I'm also wondering about Warren County. But even there would only be 12 counties that use CAMA. But that makes sense because most of these other counties are more rural, and they don't have the large subdivisions with similar properties as well. So CAMA just is not very useful for those counties. Now, with regard to equipment needs, PVA offices are responsible for purchasing vehicles or paying mileage costs if personal vehicles are used, office computers, tablets that can be taken out into the field for that field work, and all other hardware associated with their computers. All these equipment needs are paid for with the local funds received by the office. And as you've heard from previous presentations made by various PVAs, those local funds are becoming increasingly scarce as a larger share of those funds have to be remitted to the state to cover personnel costs that are not covered by their general fund appropriation. Okay, now let's go to the next slide, and that will take us to our second topic, mapping software needs. And this is an area where efforts to consolidate GIS software systems has been successful. In 2008, there were 5 different GIS systems in use. In 2009, the Finance Cabinet offered an Enterprise License Agreement, or ELA, to PVAs to use the ARC GIS software for their geographic information systems, which was adopted as the state standard. Initially, 87 counties entered into that agreement, but that has now grown to 116 counties. The 3 counties will have their own GIS software agreements, and 1 county is holding out and not using any GIS software. And our estimates indicate an annual savings of over $200,000 are realized through the consolidation made possible by this agreement. Now, the next 4 slides will cover the topic of shared technology and mapping. And the first slide is going to focus on aerial photography. So, as you can see from this map, there are various ways PVA offices are obtaining their aerial photography, and there are also 2 different types of aerial photography available in PVA offices. The first is ortho photography, and that shoots straight down on the property, and it's a very valuable tool used by the PVA to map parcel boundaries. You may recall that first example, we had the parcels outlined and highlighted in our example of GIS data. That would have been an ortho photography, shooting straight down on the homes in that subdivision. Oblique photography is done at an angle so that the sides of buildings can be seen. And this allows the PVA office to see much more detail about the improvements on a parcel and can assist them with developing an assessed value for the structures. This type of aerial photography can also help PVA offices locate new structures that are built in hard to access parts of the county. And as we mentioned earlier, new property assessments equal to new revenues for both the state and local taxing districts. And Mike, can we go to the next slide real quick just to show an example of oblique aerial photography? Here you can see that we get a lot more detail about the house. We're not shooting straight down on that roof. We're seeing the sides of the homes. You can see where there's a deck in the back of the house. That, who knows, that maybe that was added 2 or 3 years ago, and this oblique photography will help them identify that, hey, this house has a new deck on it. So it's just a very valuable tool that can be used by the PVA office. Okay, let's go back to the previous screen. 33 counties, the ones in green, currently use the aerial photography provided by Kentucky from Above, and that's an initiative undertaken by the Commonwealth Office of Technology. These counties only have ortho photographs. 70 counties have their own contracts with vendors such as Eagle View or Bexel to provide them with both ortho and oblique photography. And the remaining 17 counties use USDA ortho aerial photography for their mapping purposes. Okay, now let's go on, and we can skip that one. Also under shared technology and mapping are the tax roll software that is used by PVA offices. PVAs enter into their own contract with a vendor, or they are part of an in-house system that has been developed locally. And currently there are 11 tax roll systems in use throughout the state. One company has 2 different versions of its tax roll software, PVD Manage and PVD Net. Also, complementing those tax roll systems are other softwares known as Marshall and Swift. That's a software that allows PVAs to estimate the cost of construction for newly constructed properties. There's also something called CyberSoft Z-Scope that allows PVAs to toggle back and forth between their assessment software and the mainframe that the state maintains for motor vehicles. So they don't have to just log out of one and go into the other one and log out of the mainframe and come back to their tax roll software. This software allows them to go back and forth seamlessly between their tax roll systems and the state's mainframe. And lastly, there's also sketching software that they pay for, and you saw an example of that in a previous slide, just a sketch of the property. Okay, next we have, under shared technology, the websites that are utilized by PVAs. We have 107 PVA offices with websites, and again, they each negotiate their own contract agreements. 35 PVAs are in an arrangement where they pay nothing for their website, but they don't receive any revenues from subscription fees that could be generated from those websites. The other 72 offices with websites are being charged anywhere from $2,500 to $44,000 per year. And again, these charges are paid from the local funds received by the PVA office. But again, they also have the opportunity to generate subscription fees from those websites as well. Websites have proven to be valuable resources for both the PVA offices and the general public. The public can obtain the information they want without having to actually come to the office. And this reduces in-person visits to the office, which frees up valuable PVA staff time to complete their required tasks. And this is extremely important since PVA offices are operating short-staffed to help with their budget shortfall. Then the next topic is for sheriff, clerk, and PVA shared technology. And although the PVA office is the primary focus of this task force, there are other local officials involved in the property tax process. After the PVA's assessed values have been approved by the Department of Revenue, then local tax rates are set and tax bills are printed. Sheriffs and county clerks are both involved in the collection of property taxes. And sheriffs are initially responsible for collecting property tax bills, and year after year they collect over 98% of the amounts due. I think it's about 98.5% in the last year that I know of. The collection work in the sheriff's office typically concludes as of the close of business on April the 15th each year. The tax bills are then transferred to the county clerk's office, and the delinquent tax bills are then known as a certificate of delinquency. And these certificates are recorded in the county clerk's office as a lien against the property they represent. The county attorney becomes responsible for enforcing the collection of the certificates of delinquency. However, all payments on these delinquencies are received in the county clerk's office. And I've worked with several vendors in past years to help them make sure their products calculated the delinquent amounts due properly and generate accurate reports. However, the county clerks and sheriffs make their own decisions with regard to which software vendor they want to use. In some counties, the sheriff and county clerk select different vendors, and occasionally I get a phone call about a dispute between a software company when property tax bill information has to be transferred from one office to another. However, I believe in the vast majority of cases there are no issues between vendors. Now, possibly if the same vendor was used by all offices involved in the property tax process, this would definitely ensure a smooth transfer of data from the PVA office to the county clerk's office, then from the county clerk to the sheriff, and then it circles back down to the county clerk's office. And then if you roped in the county attorney's office for the same software, then that could assist that office with the preparation of the statutorily required delinquent notices that are prepared for each delinquent taxpayer. So there could be some cost savings about these, but and it also could be taxpayer friendly since you could have less shuffling of taxpayers between offices, but there's always going to be actions that have to be taken by each specific office, such as if a taxpayer comes in to the clerk's office or the sheriff's office to talk about they talk about a homestead exemption. Well, they're going to have to apply for the homestead exemption in the PVA office, so that's unavoidable. But if they're in the PVA office applying for the homestead, if they're on the same software, possibly the PVA could then tell them, well, here's the effect of this exemption on your tax bill, and they would have an idea of what they need to remit to the sheriff's office. But I think my colleagues from Kenton County and from Henderson County will have a lot more to say about those issues. So thank you all very much. And now that I will try to answer any questions, or maybe Mike and I will try to answer any questions you all may have.
I don't think we have any questions this time. We may come back to you if you don't mind, Tom.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
I'm here throughout the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm getting all tied up in my mask here, excuse me. I think the next person we have is Kent Annis with the GIS Branch Manager, Commonwealth Office of Technology. Kent, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
Kent, I don't think we've ever met, but we've talked quite a bit over the last few months and everything, and I appreciate all your work on this, so we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, can you all see my slide deck there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good, very good. Appreciate your time today. My name is Kent Annis. I'm with the Commonwealth Office of Technology, GIS. I've been doing GIS and mapping for a little over 30 years and have been in state government for, I guess, about 23 or 24. So, GIS operates under KRS 42650, based upon the legislative findings noted in 42630. We maintain the central statewide GIS clearinghouse. We coordinate multi-agency GIS projects. We create and update GIS standards, so we make sure we're all using the same sort of software and same sort of file type. We provide centralized GIS services, offer technical assistance and guidance to the greater GIS community, promote collaboration and data sharing. Those are just a quick overview of what we do. So, a few interesting tidbits here. Did you know that Kentucky is commonly known as the best map state in the nation? We maintain a nationally recognized, publicly available enterprise GIS that is accessible as interactive maps, downloadable data, and baseline information. We entered this year with over 40 years of experience in GIS, beginning with Governor Julian Carroll's Lands Unsuitable for Mining project. The GeoNet and its supporting infrastructure at COT receives a monthly average of 15 million server requests from upwards of 30,000 unique visitors. Those people are out there using interactive maps, retrieving data, or doing different types of research. Kentucky, via its highly successful KY from Above program, is one of a small number of states that has achieved statewide LiDAR or elevation data coverage. Our water, wastewater, mining, transportation, recreation, and geologic GIS implementations are unmatched in the nation. Consultants, investors, economic development specialists, local governments, everybody utilizes this information as they look to invest, locate, or visit the Commonwealth. And we have a rich history of collaborating on projects and sharing data amongst agencies. Very quickly, and Tom touched upon this, but what is GIS data? It's data about objects or events that have a location. And that location could be static, like a road or a city or a water tank. Could be dynamic, like a moving vehicle, like a train or a pedestrian or the spread of an infectious disease. And also, as Tom showed, it combines this location information with attribute information, with information about those objects. And we also store information over time, so we can see how things have changed over time. We have successfully consolidated all this data into a enterprise GIS located in the computing center here in Frankfurt. So basic types of GIS data are point data. So here you see a point. This is a school. It's located on the entrance to the school, and you can see the information about this particular school. We have line data. Here we have a water line selected. It's the raw water line coming from the source to the treatment plant in Danville. We know it's 24-inch, and we know it was constructed in 1960 of ductile iron. We also have area data, so things that are, demonstrate that we store as a polygon. In this case, we're looking at the Hensley Pine Mountain Wildlife Management Area. We know it's over 4,000 acres, and we're displaying it on top of topographic mapping. We also have a lot of aerial photography, and Mr. Crawford alluded to this as well. We have the ortho imagery that's straight down, leaf off, so there's no leaves on the trees. Nothing's being obscured in the built or natural environment. Topographic maps, which we use for a variety of purposes. And then, of course, elevation models. And these are very key, especially for research, for drainage issues, floodplain determination, and things of that sort. So how do agencies use GIS? And I'm just going to throw these up here on the screen. We use it for a wide variety of things. And what you're seeing there is just really a sampling. I mean, we could talk for hours about how the different agencies use this. But, of course, 911, property mapping, as we're talking about, school safety, all very important things. So, why do we share all this today? This is I want to step through this here. So these are streams, and that's probably pretty obvious from looking at the screen. And these are airports. But, if you're sitting there looking at these airports and these streams, you probably don't know where that is, or what we're really looking at. So I'm going to drop some water tanks on here, and okay, well, those are water tanks. That's great. It really doesn't help me tell me where it is. That happens to be a bicycle route from Transportation Cabinet. And these are stream gauges from Energy and Environment Cabinet. That's railroads that are mapped by Transportation. These are bridges that also come from Transportation. Of course, as you expect, they're located over streams. And there's a county boundary. So we got 3 different counties we're looking at. We're probably getting a little more context here in terms of where we are. City boundaries that just showed up there in yellow. And these are U.S. roads highlighted by speed limits. So you can start to see, okay, well, this is New Circle Road, this is I-75, this is 64. So, now we've figured out we're in Fayette County because we're able to put this stuff in context with everybody's data. So if the people that were just looking at bridges or just looking at water gauges, if they didn't have all of this other information behind it that we shared, they really wouldn't be able to put it in context. That's why we share all of these layers. The National Spatial Data Infrastructure has all these different themes, and you can see the layers there over on the left. And Kentucky is very fortunate. We have over 400 GIS layers in our repository. The vast majority of those are publicly available. They're documented and categorized according to federal standards. And Kentucky was recognized as having contributed the most framework layers to USGS several years ago. But these are the things we still don't have. We still don't have address points, and we still don't have parcel data. And our lowest scores on the NIST Geospatial Maturity Assessment from 2019, they do these every 2 years, were because of our lack of these 2 data sets. We still did very good, and we're still in the top ranking. We got an A-. Nobody got anything higher, but we could be a little bit better if we had access to those layers. So, why are we a leader in this? Because we do recognize this data as an asset. We promote collaboration. We reduce duplicative spending. We require reasonable documentation for our layers. We identify and promote authoritative data sources for use. We rely very heavily on existing business processes. We're not asking people to come up with a new way of doing things. We try to embed this in the business process. We provide direct and easy access to the data, and we establish open communications with all of our stakeholders. And of course, as I've alluded to, we openly share data. So why is 911 address point data important? Well, today, when you make a phone call, there's a master street address guide, this MSAG, and that those addresses are associated with the phone number. So if you're calling from a landline, they know an address, and they do a little lookup on the map, and then they use the GIS to display it. Well, in NextGen 911, because we all have cell phones, GIS is going to be used for not only validation and routing to that, but also the display. So those address points are going to become even more important as we migrate to NextGen 911. So as you can see here, we've got these address points in this subdivision, and they're on the main entrance to the structure, which is what a first responder wants. They want to be able to get on a long street and go right to that main entrance. The overlap here is that the PVAs need this data too, obviously, for their work. So, having this data really enhances the response time of first responders, improves situational awareness, basically saves lives. It also provides the exact site address that's needed for PVA parcel mapping and assessment operations. And of course, if we've got these address points, you think about all the databases out there across local, state and federal government that have, addresses in it, we can then take those databases and then drop that on a map. We can see where those things are. And it also helps us improve decision-making during infrastructure planning stages. Very important for that as well. Not going to spend much time on this because Mr. Crawford alluded, he touched on this in his presentation. But what we're looking at here is Webster County. You can see their parcels and you can see some of the basic information associated with each one of those. So parcel data is a graphic representation of a property boundary used in the assessment process. You got to understand it is not a legal property boundary. It is represented as a polygon feature in our mapping system, and it includes a corresponding database of all the relevant information. Currently, it exists as 120 separately maintained county-based data sets. We've got 120 islands of data. It's created in different ways. The methods vary, but most PVAs utilize aerial photography when creating those lines. Some PVAs use coordinate geometry tools to input those calls from deeds, which is very handy. And then some PVAs still scale and sketch the lines on overlays. That is then later sent to Department of Revenue, and then they input the data on their behalf. The best practice is to utilize both the coordinate geometry tools and the high accuracy ortho imagery to get those parcel lines in there. Using those two methodologies, you're going to get the best results. And of course, utilization of those practices over time means that the data will improve as changes and updates are made. So this is trying to underscore the importance of putting all this data together and sharing it. Of course, we would introduce a lot of efficiencies if all agencies had read-only access to it for internal usage only. Standards, as I talked about standards earlier, a common data storage and input standard would improve data quality and integrity across the board. Data sharing, that clearly demonstrates that collaboration across agency lines enhances governmental operations, and actually, the next thing, saves resources. Personnel, travel, processing, and data cost savings would be realized if the data was integrated and shared. Parcels, also, think about it like this. This is the lowest common denominator of all your boundary layers. So this is kind of a sandwich, a stack there that I just listed. So look down here in Barron County where I've got these parcel lines. And then, we've got the school districts on top of those, the city boundaries, the voting districts, and then, of course, the county line. Over here in Hart County, you're kind of flying, blind. You don't have that information, and those things don't always line up. Long term, we have the parcels, we can vertically align all of these layers throughout our GIS boundaries data layers. Very important for us. So as we've worked with stakeholders and state government, and these agencies talk to us about their needs, there's three main things. They either use it for land management, decision support, or situational awareness. They're trying to buy or sell property. They want to know what the best location is for some sort of activity or an industrial facility, or they're using it for emergency response, intelligence reasons, post-event mitigation efforts, and things of that sort. Which agencies need parcel data? The only agency I know in state government that doesn't use GIS is personnel. And as you can see from this listing, there's a lot of very important agencies doing a lot of very important things, and they need this data. Agency uses. You've all seen this slide before. This is the same slide I showed earlier. All of these uses that they, within these business processes, could benefit from having access to the parcel data. How does the public benefit from this? Well, in an indirect way, if we reduce operational costs, that would significantly reduce the cost within those agencies, and that's an indirect benefit to the taxpayers. Lots of times right now, we make decisions without access to this data. And unfortunately, we do this sometimes when time is of the essence. So improved decision-making within our state and local governmental entities benefits all citizens in the Commonwealth. And then this is something that was pointed out to us, especially by the first responders and folks like that. It's very rare that they have access. You know, those guys, emergency management, the environmental response team, typically just don't have access to this data. So when they're responding, you know, it sometimes adds time to it that they don't have this particular resource at their fingertips. How could the PVAs benefit from this? This is really big here, is we could use it to identify orphaned, publicly held parcels that could be put back on the tax rolls. Think about that. You know, the state's bought a lot of land that's held out there in right-of-ways and things like that. That could be put back on the tax rolls, and it becomes some sort of development, residential or commercial, that's going to affect in a positive way that county. If we share it, we can start to improve the parcel data geometry for all of these publicly held parcels. And once those are updated and improved, of course, the ones adjacent to it are. And then if Department of Housing and Building Codes, if we had some sort of mechanism there where they could alert the PVAs of properties being developed, that gives them a little heads up or a little hint that they need to go out there and say, hey, like Mr. Crawford alluded to earlier, there's a new deck on the back of this, or there's a new building, or this garage has been enlarged. And for any agencies that share with other agencies, anytime we can promote sharing, that back and forth really helps us all collected. So aerial photography, why is this so important? But I think most everybody would agree it provides context. It is the essential base layer. It's intuitive. You look at that and you can see without having to stare at it too long that this is a hospital. Here's the landing pad. And, it's very recognizable. It's crucial for data updates. That's how the parcel lines, roadways, infrastructure, different environmental features, all of these things are input and maintained using aerial photography. So there's multiple kinds of aerial photography, and one of them, and it was on the slide that Tom showed, leaf on USDA. For those counties, this is what they've got. This is what they see. They have leaves that are on the trees, and of course it's less desirable because it is obscuring things in the built-in natural environment. So, there's a big difference in those two slides there. And leaf off, which we collect during February to April timeframe, is the most desirable because there's not obscuring anything. We also have issues with resolution. What we get from USDA is of a lower quality, so that kind of looks fuzzy compared to the other two. And it's a function of the distance between the sensor on the plane as well as the quality of the sensor and the ground control. There's this notion of accuracy, and a lot of times when you're looking at relative measurements, it's not that important, but it's a function of the quality of the elevation model, ground control that's set, the GPSs that are used, and the appropriate processing techniques. So this image and that image are extremely similar. They're almost identical. The only difference is that this image, there was no ground control set. Because there was no ground control set, some of your measurements on the ground are probably a little more suspect than they are when we have set ground control, utilized GPS, and the appropriate processing. Obliques, this is a good example of just a view from the side. And as they indicated in the previous presentation, this is useful for assessment purposes. The KY from Above program is a very successful collaborative effort to acquire statewide aerial photography and elevation data from LiDAR acquisitions. We're a real leader in this regard, and we're one of the few states in the nation that has achieved statewide LiDAR coverage. And over 20 local, state, and federal partners have contributed over $13 million to this effort since 2012. The good part about what we're doing here is that the specifications we're coming up with and utilizing are engineering quality. It makes sure we meet or exceed anything the feds are going to need, because they throw money into this from time to time. And if it's engineering quality, then folks like the Infrastructure Authority, the Transportation Cabinet, and others have a lot more usage for this data if it meets that spec. The other thing that we have learned is we have this tiered pricing approach. So the more we buy, the cheaper it gets. If we buy 1 county worth, it's this price. If we buy 4 counties worth, it's a little cheaper. If we buy 10 counties worth, it gets even cheaper. So this tiered pricing is really helped us save a lot of money. And then everything that's put out from KY from above is freely available and easy to access. PVAs and aerial photography. As alluded to earlier, it's needed for effective operations, especially the creation of the parcel lines. The ortho imagery is used for mapping. Oblique imagery is used for assessment. Some PVAs actually license rather than purchase their imagery. And that's something to think about. They don't actually own it. They're only able to view it on their screens, and it precludes them from sharing it with other people. Resolution and accuracy confusion. There's a lot of confusion regarding resolution, accuracy, and measurements. And a lot of this information and data that is provided to these counties not meet engineering quality. Not all of it, but that is the case in some instances. And then it's only occasionally shared at the local level and rarely shared with state government. So the other issue is that many counties just really don't have the tax base and the financial resources to afford leap-off aerial photography. And they're at a real disadvantage out there from that perspective. And it makes it a lot more difficult for those PVAs to do their job effectively. There is an opportunity for savings here. We know that some Kentucky counties have been flown twice in the same year. Let's purchase it once and let's let lots of people use it. There's economies of scale here once again. The ortho imagery is really important for all GIS users. Every GIS user, local, regional, state, federal, needs ortho imagery, the top-down view. Period. We just have to have it. Oblique imagery, that is very important to the PVAs, and there needs to be a way that we can get that in their hands, try to reduce some of the costs. And then, of course, openly share this at all levels of government. Goes back up to the second kind of bulleted point there. Let's buy it once and let's let a lot of people use it. And then we need to think of it from a temporal perspective. This stuff changes. We build subdivisions, we build roads, we build commercial sites, agriculture, all sorts of things going on. So having a full statewide refresh every 3 years is what a whole lot of states do. Some of the bigger states do every 4 years and more. All right, that wraps up my portion of the presentation. If you've got any questions, let me know. If you need to come back to me later, that's fine. I appreciate the time today.
Has anyone got any questions? Ken, I got a few if you don't mind, because we have talked about some of this in the past. At this point, your flyovers and your layering, what does that encompass, if you can tell me, compared to what the others are? You've got the ortho imagery, but do you have the obliques and the layers like Eagle View, Vexel, all these? Do you have that capability to offer that if it's needed? If we were to look at a overall GIS statewide system, so that we can get those counties that just simply aren't able to afford it into it and covered, plus maybe get cost savings on the larger counties and stuff, or some of the middle counties and everything. Do you have those options available in the system you're doing now, or would it take a major upgrade?
From a system perspective, that's not a problem. It's not a technology issue. It's just a matter of having a procurement mechanism that includes both the ortho imagery and the oblique. So yes, that's possible. It's not a technology issue. The technology is there to make it happen. It's just more of a procurement issue. So.
Okay. And if anyone else is on the line that can help with that, please feel free to jump in, whether you spoke or not. Ken, I appreciate all your information and everything, and if you will hang on the line, we may come back to you. Next, okay. We have Lieutenant Colonel Patrick Morgan with the Kentucky Kenton County Sheriff's Office. And Lieutenant Morgan, we'll turn it over to you right now.
Yes, I was, Jerry Wagner, our Executive Director, hooked me up through Tom Crawford to speak about the sheriffs and the PVA working hand in hand. And I'm going to give you information about what we do here in Kenton. We're basically the county attorney. When you're looking at the tax collection, the PVA, the clerk, the sheriff, and the county attorney, or the county clerk, we're all on together as one, except our county clerk just went to a different system. But what's unique here in Kenton, as far as shared software with the PVA, we work, so when a taxpayer comes in, they have let's say if our people are trained, if they're 65 years of age or older, that we believe, or if they have a disability and we see their tax bill and they have the homestead exemption, what we do for them here in Kenton with the shared software that we deal with the PVA, we send them to our PVA office located here within our building and our second location in Independence, Kentucky. And they got the proper documentation, like just showing proof of their age. For an example, the bill can be exonerated and getting the homestead exemption right there on the spot. A new bill is generated, call it e-bill, and it is then sent. They come back to the sheriff's office and they pay it right here within 5 to 10 minutes. So they get the exonerated bill. We do that at disability payment. Also, we work with our PVA very closely. If the person is eligible, who's, say, if they're 68, 69 years old and never received the homestead exemption, we generate the paperwork, the form to get them. They're allowed 1 year plus 2 year look back, and they get their billing. They'll receive a check where we work with them and get money back to them. So it really works here in Kenton with the shared PVA share collection tool. We collect in Kenton at 99.2%. Last year we were 137 million charged in collection. This year we're about 145, but we collected about 99.2. Tom said it's 98 plus percent. But that goes with the hand in hand that we work together here. Even though our clerk went on to a different tax, or not taxes, a whole different computer system, there is a bridge linking us so we can look at delinquent taxes, what was paid in the previous year, why we're collecting this year, who bought what tax bill, the tax bill sale. And again, it just works uniquely, unique system here where we do all share, and actually our clerk has a bridge where we can look at the different things that we do here in Kenton. We have an in-house software system. Our auditors really like it. Our reports are very neat and clean. Not saying anything bad about anybody's other system, but when we work together as one within a county, it really has shown that the taxpayers benefit, the taxing districts benefit. We have a very efficient tax system, tax collection system. So I was asked to come here. I've been here at this office for 39 years, so and I've worked in all the different aspects of the sheriff's office. So that's basically, I came to speak about the cooperation between two offices, and it works well. And we have that, the BVA and the sheriff, for many years here in Kenton.
I want to thank you for that. If we got any questions on, we've got a quiet crowd today, but I've always got a question. When you work between the PVA and the clerk, and you on addresses, say you've got a bill that's misaddressed, or you're trying to track them, get these, and you find address corrections. How are you able to do that within your systems, or do you have to physically send that over separately between your organizations? Or
what typically happens if we find a problem within the address, we're just charged with collecting, as you know very well. But if there's hopefully it's caught before the tax bill goes out. But if there is a problem, we can work it out where we send them to our PVA office here, and our clerk, and they try to resolve the issue as soon as possible. And if there has to be what we call as a need bill is exonerated, then it comes back to us and with the address change. And hopefully the PIDN number and everything is fixed, whatever has to be done. If it's a typographical or something of that nature, that's all worked out between the offices, and we do, and it works well. I mean, and it has been. Have we had that many problems? I look back maybe one or two, but like a splitting of a property where a family splits a property. There's been a couple issues that way, but I can't recall a lot of that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If there's no more other questions, we'll move on to Renisa Abner, the county clerk at Henderson County. Are you with us, Ms. Abner?
Hello. Yes, thank you, Chairman Bridges, for having me today. And I basically just wanted to talk about the situation and the tax cycle that we have here in Henderson. We are a county who, our PVA has a separate software, and the county clerk, the county attorney, and the sheriff, we all share in a different software program. It works really well here because, with the segregation of duties and the things that each office is responsible for, we feel really good about the PVA having their program and, checks and balances that they provide us with the data. And then our software takes that information, and we also have checks and balances, and we make sure that those totals agree before those tax bills are sent out to the taxpayers in Henderson. So although we have two different software tax programs here in the county, they work well together, and it provides that, that check that those tax bills are accurate and that we've all done our job. This year is especially challenging. I know Tom Crawford, he talked about that earlier, and it was really a challenging year. But because we have such a great relationship here between all of the county officials, and we all want the same thing. We want accurate tax bills. We want the taxpayers to know exactly and transparently what they're assessed at and what they're being taxed on, and the rates, and making sure they're all accurate. It works, and we have that great relationship here. This year we sent out approximately 21,000 tax bills, and I can give you a breakdown of how much it costs to produce those on our end. And when I say our, I mean the county clerk and the sheriff and the county attorney. We all pay, a fee to our software provider, and then the PVA pays a separate fee. And I don't have access to that information. I do know that he uses TBD, so you may have some reference points, or Tom may have some reference points as to the cost on that. I'm not certain. But annually, it costs us about, for the production, formatting, printing, we own our own hardware and software for our support for our website, but we do pay for some, maintenance on that. So it costs us here around $12,500 for all of that. And then you add in the postage, of course, that the sheriff pays. And so it costs us about $18,000 to produce those 21,193 bills, yearly. But it is it's a good system for us. I know the Kenton County kind of he referred to, it's really easy whenever you have the same program, as far as the taxpayer is concerned. Whenever you go to one office, when you can see the delinquencies, even though the county clerks collect the delinquencies, when the sheriff sees the delinquencies and can alert them to that fact, they can let them know, hey, you need to go see the county clerk and you have this delinquency. Or, we send, taxpayers PVA if they have questions about say their map number, which is how we identify property here in Henderson, is by map number. you know, or if they have any questions about the assessment, we send them to the PVA office, and we're all located in the same building. So just, you know, here generally, we don't have any problems having two separate programs, one for the PVA and then one that we all share. So just kind of giving you an idea of how things work here.
Okay, thank you. We still have no questions. We have got a very quiet group today. I do want to remind everyone what we've been tasked for is looking for duplicity, efficiencies, and ways that cost-saving measures. And you know, I do. It's good to hear yours is working together. I have heard from some counties and things where they don't integrate real efficiently, and they are struggling making that work. But I do appreciate what's going on in Henderson County. We're going to be moving over to another thing. Before we leave that, Tom, are you still with us?
I am, yes.
Okay. And this is more getting back maybe to Mr. Annis, the GIS and things. Tom, do you feel like there could be some savings with these GIS systems? We've got 120 counties. We've got a number of them using one type. Some of them not. There's one that's not able to do anything. Do you? I'm just asking you. I hate to be putting you on the spot, but I feel like there ought to be some sort of savings here when we're looking at this in a whole scheme. Now, it may not be something that could accomplish instantly or anything, but what I'd just like your thoughts on it, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, as far as GIS software, we're already doing that. That's one where we have had some success with that enterprise license agreement, where we have 116 counties on that same agreement and 3 others on their own and 1 not doing any GIS. But that, according to our records, we're thinking we're saving a little over $200,000 conservatively by doing this ELA rather than having individual contracts that the TVAs may enter into for their own GIS software. So that's a good example of a consolidated effort there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
No one's looking at us, so no one has any more questions. We'll end it right there, and I may get back with you, Tom, personally later on. We're going to move over to our LRC A&R staff and do an overview of the property tax calendar to wrap up today.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Brown. I'm an analyst. I'm here at LRC with the Appropriations and Revenue Committee. So I'm going to provide a kind of a brief overview of the property tax calendar and some of the issues that have been reported in some testimonies here in this task force, but also from a joint committee meeting at local government that occurred last interim that was the whole topic of that meeting was the property tax calendar. This first slide is a document that I pulled from that local government committee meeting from last June. This was prepared by KCO. It was a presentation that they gave on the property tax calendar. I particularly like this view of the property tax calendar because it's done in a timeline format, which I haven't seen before. But it outlines all the different parties that are involved in the property tax calendar, and it color codes them, so it's kind of easy to follow. So we're just going to go over this real quickly. The property tax calendar starts on January 1st with the assessment date. That is when property is assessed as of that date. Following the assessment date is the listing period. The PVA, which is outlined in green here on this slide, is involved in that first part of the calendar all the way up through to May. With the listing period, the PVA is gathering data to create that tax roll, which is a collection of all the property in the county and the assessments and their value. By the first Monday in April, they submit a recap to the Department of Revenue. Department of Revenue kind of reviews that and lets them know if there needs to be any changes made to that recap. By the first Monday in May is when the inspection period starts. The inspection period is when the public can review the assessments. It goes for 13 days. It's actually a little longer than 13 days because it's 6 days a week. There's a Saturday included, but overall it has to be open for 13 days. And that is when the public can review the assessment roll. Is also when the property owner, if they dispute their value, they can have a conference with the PVA. And a PVA conference is the first step in the appeals process if you want to appeal the value of your property, and that will occur during the inspection period. Once the inspection period is closed, the PVA will submit a final recap of that tax roll to the Department of Revenue, and we'll have all the final figures on it. And the Department of Revenue then gets involved in the process of certifying that tax roll or those assessments. The Department of Revenue in this slide is in the dark gray color, and they perform the certification of the property values. They do a certification by doing a sales assessment ratio study where they take the previous sales from that county, put it into a formula, and determine whether or not the current assessments are within an acceptable range of fair cash value. For sales that are in the study that are a year old, I believe the range is 95% to 105% of fair cash value. If there are more recent sales within the last 6 months in the study, then it can be 90% to 110% of fair cash value. The property that is assessed for the current year has to fall within that range in order for it to get certified. Once it's certified, then we can move on to the tax rate setting process. In this document, it shows the fiscal court in the navy blue for the tax rate setting, but honestly, every local taxing district has a similar process, so you can plug in whatever group you want into that little navy blue color. It starts with the Department of Local Government. Department of Local Government will calculate the compensating tax rate and also the 4% tax rate for the local taxing districts. They will send them that information so they have it to make a decision on what rate they want to levy. But the local taxing district can really levy any rate. They don't have to levy to compensate. They don't have to levy the 4%. They can levy whatever rate they want. If they levy a rate that is above the compensating rate, they have to have a public hearing. If they levy a rate that goes 4%, that produces 4% more in revenues than the compensating rate does, the amount of the rate that produces more than 4% in revenues than the compensating rate can be subject to recall. And so if you have a rate that is subject to recall, an extra 45 days gets added to the calendar for the petition process if a petition is filed. Once the assessment is complete and the tax rate is set, you're then ready to prepare the tax bills. So the county clerk comes in, they're in the light blue color. They come in around September, prepare those tax bills, and they have to have those delivered to the sheriff by September 15th. once they are delivered to the sheriff can then mail them and collect the tax money. In some counties, the sheriff mails it in October 1st. In other counties, the sheriff mails it in November 1st. Regardless of when the bill is mailed, the first 30 days after the mailing is called the 2% discount period. And that is when the property owner can pay their property tax bill with a 2% discount. After the 2% discount period expires, up to December 31st, the bill can be paid at full face value. December 31st is the due date. Anything that's not paid by December 31st is considered delinquent. The delinquency starts January 1st of the following year, and then you get into the collections of delinquent tax bills after that. These next few slides, I'm not going to go into great detail. They are basically kind of blown up portions of that first slide showing what each party does. And I wanted to include them in here for your own reference. Again, this is from that same KCO presentation. They did a really great job of outlining what each party does by timeline. But I think it's important to see here that the PVA, you can kind of see when they're busy at the beginning with the assessment and the listing period, but they do have some stuff at the end of the year also with helping with correcting addresses and updating their records. They're going to have exonerations, things like that they have to deal with. So they're not just busy the beginning of the year, but they're kind of busy all year. Majority of it is the beginning of the year. This is the fiscal court's kind of blown up portion of that slide. Again, you can put other similar local taxing districts in the same slide. It shows that they're busy as kind of during the 45 days that they're setting that tax rate in July and August. Down at the bottom of the slide, it talks about the compensating tax rate and the 4% and how they have to have a public hearing and it's subject to recall. This is kind of the tight timeline that they have to set the tax rate. The next is the county clerk. They're going to be busiest in September when they are printing the tax rolls or preparing those the tax bills, I'm sorry. And then they're also busy again in the delinquency process at the end of the year. So you'll see here, once you get through December, or you roll into January and the tax bills are delinquent, they come into play again after April 15th when the certificates of delinquencies are created. The sheriff is busy at the end of the tax year mailing those bills and collecting the tax, but then again they are involved in the delinquency part January through April of the next year, dealing with collecting the delinquencies. By April 15th, any delinquencies that still remain then become certificates of delinquencies and they're transferred to the county clerk. This slide here is something I kind of threw together. It's taken, Department of Revenue has a Kentucky property tax calendar on their website. It kind of takes that document and I've added a few things to it. One thing I added was the statute column. So you can see here are listed out the actions, the important dates of the property tax calendar. And you can kind of see the date and then the statute reference that goes with it. I've heard some testimony from previous committee meetings where they've said that the property tax calendar is constitutional. That is not really the case. Property tax itself is constitutional, but the dates and the deadlines in the calendar are mandated by statute. And so I just wanted to provide the references so you can see there are a lot of different statutes involved, but they are mandated by statute. So this isn't any new information here as far as the dates go on. It's the same dates we just went over. I broke it out by current assessments on one side of this slide, and then the delinquencies on the other. So you can just see that that it continues. It's a whole year from January to December, but then when you have the delinquency, it kind of rolls over to the next year, and you get involved from January all the way through August with those delinquencies they're dealing with. This is a slide that talks about 2020 property tax calendar. This year, the property tax calendar deadlines were adjusted due to COVID. The Department of Revenue has the authority to adjust the property tax calendar if needed in the tax collection process. In April of this year, they sent a memo out to the PVAs letting them know that the deadlines that normally occur are going to be adjusted by roughly 60 days. So instead of the first recaps being due, April, they're going to be due in June, and it just kind of rolls through there, adjusting the dates of the calendar. Even though they were able to adjust the dates by 60 days, they still were able to make up time so that they can get the tax collected prior to the end of the year. So the tax bill should still be collected before January 1st. Here's some of the common issues. These are issues that I've heard in other committees, and some in the testimony in this task force also. I think the largest issue is that the tax calendar is tight. The deadlines are very tight and very important that they be met. So there's not a lot of room for error. And if you make a change to one deadline, that it will have a ripple effect through the calendar. So that really applies to all the parties that are involved in the calendar, that they have to meet their job duties and their deadlines. And if anyone delays or is unable to meet that, then it has an impact on the next person involved in the calendar with that ripple effect. Delays in the property tax calendar can impact the budgets of the local taxing districts. So if the tax is not collected by the end of the year, it can really impact the budgets of all these local taxing districts. Some taxing districts solely rely on property tax income. Other taxing districts that they have other types of income, but property tax may be their main source of income. So if that money is not brought in on time, it's a huge impact to their budget. Some local taxing districts are on a calendar year. So if the money is not brought in by December 31st, it rolls over to their next budget year, and then they end up having issues with auditing. Their income and their expenses don't match up. So it can really impact them. The timing of the calendar sometimes impedes on the other job duties. I think the best example of this might be the county clerks. In September, they are preparing the property tax bills, and at the same time, they are dealing with ballots and getting those ready for the November election. So the timing of when that property tax calendar, their busiest part, ends up being at the time that they're also busy doing something else. Another example is the timing of the calendar may impact the PVAs in that they are most of their busy work is in the winter months from January through March. And that's also the time that they're trying to do field work, and the weather may not be great. So I've heard some testimony that if the weather is bad, it ends up delaying their ability to do their field work, which ends up delaying the calendar. It could impact them getting their tax roll done quickly and when they need to. The last common issue is the advertising requirements and assessment notifications. Inside the property tax calendar, I have listed out most of the dates that are important, but inside it, there's all kinds of other dates that are in there for like advertising requirements. So if you were to set a tax rate that was above the compensating tax rate and you're required to have a public hearing, you're also required to advertise. So you have to send advertisements prior to that inspection period. So there's, or not prior to the inspection, prior to setting the tax rate. So the advertising requirements for the local taxing districts that only have 45 days to set a tax rate, they also have to advertise for 2 weeks. So 2 weeks consumes a lot of that 45 days. And then they have the assessment notifications that have to be sent out. If a PVA has to send it out if they increase the assessment of the property. So they have to send a notification to all the people that have been impacted by the increase as far as the property owners. And also the assessment notifications have to be stuffed and mailed, and the timing of we've heard some testimony that the timing of the employees doing that is impact their ability to do their job. So these things that are sent out are, it's costing a lot of time on the property tax counter as far as them getting their job done quickly and by the time they need, but it's also costly to their budget. And then there's been some concern that whether people are subscribing to these newspapers and whether they're seeing these advertisements, and whether the assessment notifications are reaching all the people that need to be reached, because there's people that move and then they return mail and then they have to deal with the return mail and getting them sent back out. So all of this is causing issues and delays that could impact overall the process. That's basically all that I have. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Senator Mills?
That was very good. Thank you. When was the last time the tax calendar was amended? Do you remember? Has it been recently? These statutes, I haven't looked them up yet, but do we legislate on those? I don't remember in the last 4 years it hasn't been changed, has it?
Not that I'm aware of, and maybe Tom Crawford might know this better than I do, but I want to say it's prior to 2004.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to say it's been a long time,
Okay.
but I didn't research the dates on the statutes to see when the last amendment was, but I can't remember the last time it was changed.
And then I just have a follow-up, if I can. Just to anybody else that's still online, is there any input in how the calendar needs to be changed, or are there changes that need to be made, or overlaps that are allowed? I'd be interested to see what Mr. Crawford or anybody else has to say about that. Thank you. That was a good presentation.
Yes. This is Tom Crawford. Thank you. First of all, Cynthia, that was very good. It's obvious you've done your research on the tax calendar. So that was a very nice presentation. I don't really have a question. I just have some comments about the tax calendar deadlines. I think we've demonstrated this year, of all years, that even though we had a 60-day delay in getting the initial real estate totals to the Department of Revenue because of the COVID-19 emergency, with the cooperation and efforts of the PVAs, my staff here in Revenue, and also the local taxing districts hustling up and setting tax rates, that we now have the tax bills out by October 1 in a lot of counties, and by November 1 in most of the others. So we're on time, even though we had a 60-day delay in getting the initial totals from the property valuation administrators. So it is possible to make up time in the tax calendar. So I think we've demonstrated that very well for 2020. So that's really my only comment at this time. I didn't really have any questions for Cynthia. I thought she did a very nice job.
Let me follow up just and ask a question. So is it your opinion that there is enough flexibility in the calendar for hiccups to happen and it to be made up? So there's not any really super tight spots that need legislative attention at this time?
In my opinion, I don't think so. I think, like I said, we've demonstrated that you can make up the time in the tax calendar. As far as getting the assessment certified, it's submitted by PVA, certified by the Department of Revenue, and we also have the cooperation of the taxing districts to make sure they set their tax rates in a timely manner as well.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments, Mr. Crawford, and I just want to, Cynthia, tell you you've done a great job, and I know this is sort of added in the last week or so, so appreciate all your input and everything, just getting us on that tax calendar and helping us better understand all the specifics that not only the PVA, but how the other agencies interwork with that and the time frame. And it is a fine-tuned machine, it looks like, to make all that happen and meet all those dates. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
I just want to make a comment about as we move forward and what our process is. Would you like to comment on that, or we'll have our staff maybe comment on it if you'd like to comment?
I guess the only thing I would say is we are currently in the process of drafting the report. And I think that will be the bulk of the next meeting is going through that. We anticipate getting a draft out to all members well in advance of the next meeting, so that you can look at the report and make sure that we as staff have captured everything that we should have, and we have captured the recommendations that have been made throughout this process. So we are definitely working toward that end.
Very good. The only other thing I would add is just if there's members of the committee that have issues that they would like to resolve through legislation or propose legislation, if you could get with the staff and make sure that the notes in our summary cover those issues so we have it documented in our findings as well. So thank you so much. Staff's done a great job, and presenters did a good job, especially my county court clerk from Henderson County.
One other thing that we have received, I know of one, maybe two letters that we'll get Ms. Hayes to send out to all the members of the committee, people that we just ran out of time, and they had some concerns and they want to share those concerns. So they've been instructed to put that in writing, get it to us, and then they're going to get that. We'll get that. Is that right, Ms. Jenner? Yeah. We'll get that out to all the members so that you can review them. And then I would encourage everyone in the next few days or so, next week, members of the committee, that if you have any suggestions or anything, I haven't talked to Jennifer about this, but I would offer you to, contact her, share with her your thoughts. She and I had a real good discussion. It's been about a week ago, and we spent about an hour on the phone, and it was very profitable for me. So I just wanted to offer that to everyone and everything. But other than that, if there's no other comments, do we have a motion to adjourn? Second? Okay. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.